Maybe you don't use the bus. Maybe you don't give a damn about the bus. An enormous amount of black violence on the bus, directed at other passengers, directed at bus drivers especially. Maybe you don't give a damn about it because you don't ride the bus. You don't even know anybody who rides the bus. Well, we're going to talk about why you should in a minute. This is Colin Flaherty. Welcome to the Don't Make the Black Kids Angry podcast. Here we talk about black mob violence, black on white crime, black on old, black on young, black on gay, black on straight, black on Amish, black on Eskimos, kitties, puppies, and turtles. And how it's so wildly out of proportion. And how so many reporters and public officials are in such denial, deceit, and delusion about it. And we have another exhibit, Exhibit A, right here. But not for me, the train and the boat. Now you're going to hear a television story out of the San Francisco Bay Area about violence on the bus. And they show, and a reporter went and grabbed a lot of the videotapes from the bus company, especially the incidents that had been reported as an assault. And she started showing a lot of them on TV. And she started saying about how these bus drivers are in danger, how this happens to them, that happens to them. And as she's talking, we're seeing the videos of black people assaulting drivers and passengers. That's it. It's a black thing. Assaulting bus drivers is a black thing. You don't have to care about the bus. You don't have to care about bus drivers. But this is a perfect example of the enormity of this problem and the denial behind it. Right after cops, I think bus drivers are the ones who are on the front line of this black on white, black on public space violence that we document here all the time. Bus drivers are some of our most enthusiastic and dedicated followers on my books and in my minds.com/Colin Flaherty channel and on this podcast. I mean, these are the guys going to work every day carrying a lunch bucket, and they know that if they end up on a route for one reason or another, and by the way, that's how you punish cops and bus drivers, right? If you speak up a little bit too loudly about something the company doesn't want you to say, or something the sheriff doesn't want you to say, or the chief of police want you to say, you are assigned to a black neighborhood. That is punishment. And reward is the opposite. If you're doing good, if you're doing well in your job, or you have enough seniority, the first thing you do, whether you're black or white, especially black, is you're getting the hell out of that black neighborhood if you're a cop or a bus driver. They hire all these black cops with the hope that somehow the black cops are going to stay in the hood, spread some black love and understanding and Wakanda-like prosperity to all the people he left behind, because we know it's not right for successful black people to leave the hood behind. You have to remember where you came from. It's amazing, all these expectations that losers put on successful people in this country. Anyway, so we get tons and tons of material from bus drivers. And we're going to hear from one. So let's, in an earlier podcast I did a little while ago, so I just fished that out of the archive, but it's, A, I don't think anybody here has heard it, and B, it's just as fresh today as it was then. So let's hear the story from NBC. Let's hear the story from another bus, a recent rape at a bus stop in Chicago. And then let's hear from a bus driver who tells us what it's like right on the front lines of this ridiculous level of black hostility in public spaces.
Scared for their lives, AC Transit bus drivers say assaults against them are on the rise, and it's all caught on video. Senior investigative reporter Vicki Wynn joins us now with this special report. Vicki.
These riders were left stranded, forced to get off the bus after their driver was assaulted. It's a dangerous situation that is happening every month. We reviewed more than 200 incidents since 2014 and found these attacks happen more often than the public or even the transit district is aware. We want to warn you, some of the video is very disturbing. On any given day or night,
please step away from me.
This is what an AC Transit bus driver is up against. Passengers spitting, spraying, slapping, even physical attacks putting riders in danger.
Oh, that's not right. Shouldn't touch you.
The fears is always that you're not coming home.
Busan Setawan is thankful he survived this September night in 2016. It was the end of the line, and he was trying to guide a passenger off the bus.
Come on. You feel me?
Even offering a free all-day pass. When Busan called dispatch for help,
They're sending the police.
chaos. You've actually never seen this video before?
No, this is the first time.
We showed Busan the surveillance video from that night.
The police coming.
Busan tries to honk his horn for help, but the man grabs him in a chokehold and drags him off the bus. It gets worse. The man chases Busan down the block and continues the attack.
Help!
Some Good Samaritans rushed to his side, finally ending the ordeal. Police arrived 8 minutes later. The attacker, gone.
It is scary to be out there without any protection, with any help.
Busan is one of several injured drivers we reached out to who say their job leaves them vulnerable to violence. Do you feel safe in your jobs?
No.
How many of you fear that a driver will lose their life if this continues?
I do, most definitely.
These bus operators say their union first asked the district for more protection in 2014. That request included training to defuse violent passengers and a physical barrier for certain routes similar to the ones on Muni. AC Transit considered the request but declined to make the changes.
We put our life on the line every day and we don't have anything to protect ourselves.
Each year, the staff updates the AC Transit Board on the number of crimes against drivers. The most recent security report shows a decline in assaults, but the investigative unit reviewed bus surveillance video from every reported incident in the past 3 years. We found they show a spike in attacks called in by drivers during that time.
AC Transit has to realize the seriousness of the problems.
Yvonne Williams is the president of the union representing more than 1,300 drivers. She says AC Transit is underreporting the number of assaults to the public.
We want to know when any member says that they've been assaulted.
And it's very shocking.
Salvador Llamas is the chief operating officer for AC Transit. So your security reports show the assaults are on a decline.
Yes.
When we reviewed the videos, we found the assaults are actually increasing. Were you aware of that?
I think what you saw and the information that was provided to you was the clips that are labeled as assault. There is more report going on, which leads me to believe that our operators are more aware of some of these types of behaviors and they're reporting that.
Llamas says one reason the numbers don't match up is that AC Transit doesn't count how many assaults are reported by its bus operators. They send that information to law enforcement. They decide which incidents count as an assault. If an operator calls in and says that they feel they've been assaulted, you're saying that may not count as an assault?
That's where the law enforcement partners that we have work on that. They're the ones that are going to determine whether or not an assault occurred.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Hey, no, mama, you talking to women foul. You really get talking to women foul. That's a bitch. What you gonna do?
What we're going to do is we're going to respond to the operator and we're going to say, hey, operator, we got your message. You're reporting that there's an assault. You feel you've been assaulted. We're going to provide to you some trauma response resources.
Okay, I'm shaking right now. I'm not able to drive right now. This is not a joke.
Llamas says the agency is now responding to driver concerns by testing out a protective shield on some of its buses. The drivers say they've been asking for this for years. Why did it take so long?
That's a good question. The earlier models were just prototypes, and they were really not necessarily readily available on the market. We wanted to wait to see if it actually is making a difference.
You always respect a person.
Meanwhile, Busan says he forgives his attacker, but hopes the changes take effect before this happens to anyone else. AC Transit says the shields should be installed on the buses by this summer. To see where some of these assaults may have occurred in your neighborhood, we've uploaded an interactive map to our website. Just go to NBCBayArea.com/WeInvestigate.
Oh, that's difficult to watch. Thank you, Vicki.
New at 5 tonight, a woman is sexually assaulted and robbed in an armed attack that started at a CTA bus stop. Tonight, the release of an image of the suspect. The attack happened last Thursday.
And the victim is saying that she was approached by her attacker at a bus stop at 95th and Halstead. So that's in the Longwood Manor neighborhood. Liz Nagy's live with the latest on the investigation tonight. Liz?
Ellen, nearby business owners say they've seen this girl before frequently. She is waiting at this bus stop. They believe she was on her way to work early last Thursday morning when someone found her at the bus stop alone and vulnerable. The busy South Side intersection at 95th and Halstead, police say, became the scene of a young woman's horror.
The lady in the foam store was just telling me that the girl's supposed to have been out here like 5 in the morning.
As the 18-year-old woman waited to board a bus before dawn last Thursday, February 22nd, police say this man approached her, demanded her money, and took her away to a secluded area nearby.
I'm cautious about myself. I'm very protective of myself, and I know my mother is too.
In that area, police say this male suspect, armed with a weapon, sexually assaulted her, then took off with her cash.
At least she got a way to be able to run and tell a story.
This time, but with an alleged sexual assailant still on the streets, people who frequent this bus stop are apprehensive.
You don't know what the next person thinking.
Keep an eye out, watch your surroundings, women, and, make sure, you keep something, that you can protect yourself with, mace, billy club.
Now, as police look for more information about this suspect, they have already pulled surveillance video from several nearby businesses, and somehow they were able to cobble together that image that we've showed you. Police said at the time of the attack, they believe this man is about 5'5" to 5'7", was wearing a baseball hat, gray jogging pants, and a North Face fleece jacket. They say he also has a patchy beard, so they're asking people in this area, particularly those who use this bus stop, to be on the lookout.
Okay, so we're going to hear that interview with that bus driver in a minute. But boy, I just keep thinking of all the stories we've done on mass transit here. I'm thinking of BART in particular, because we really caught BART really just flat out telling us they're not going to release videos of large-scale episodes of black mob violence, robbery, and all sorts of bad business on their BART system in the San Francisco Bay Area, because they just don't want to show videos of black people, because somehow that would embarrass all concerned. And the chairman, the president, the CEO of her company who runs BART, well, he gets embarrassing phone calls where people don't like that. He doesn't want to get those phone calls anymore. When we do these stories from Chicago and San Francisco or wherever, or this bus driver, wherever he's from, we're not saying that Chicago's the worst or San Francisco's the worst. No, what we're saying is these are typical. What we're saying is in bus companies and places where bus companies and subways all over the country, this black criminality is wildly out of proportion. And when you think of all the people who have watched these videos over the last couple of years, we had 100 million views on YouTube over a 3-year period. It's going to take us a little bit longer on Minds.com to get there, but we're going to get there, and we're going to get there on this podcast as well. But when you think of all the videos we watch and all the podcasts we listen to, do you ever hear one cop, one bus driver, one nurse, one EMT driver, one school teacher come forward and say, "Colin, you got it all wrong. I've been teaching at a black school for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I've been a cop in the ghetto 20 years. I've been a bus driver through the worst neighborhoods in Chicago for 20 years. And when people see me coming, they're unfailingly polite, gracious, happy. And if anybody does give me trouble, there's 20 people standing up on the bus to stop them, to support me, to defend me." Do we ever hear that once from one person on the front lines? Do you know anybody on the front lines? Ask them. Then come back and tell me. Post a comment on, we post these we post these podcasts over at minds.com/Colin Flaherty. So you can subscribe to it we're now on iHeartRadio. Of course, we've always been on Apple, on iTunes, and we're on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes. So these things are easy to subscribe to. So just subscribe to it. And if you hear any story from somebody on the front line saying we've got it 100% wrong, please come over to minds.com/Colin Flaherty. Let us know. I don't want to waste my time on this. If there's a million bus drivers out there saying, oh no, Colin, it's the white people are causing all the trouble. The black people are always like perfect. They love the fact that they essentially are getting free transportation. They're getting subsidized transportation to and from work, to and from this rec center, to and from church, to and from here, to and from there. They love that. They're very grateful for that. Everybody, all the bus drivers, including the black bus drivers, are clamoring to get the routes to go through black neighborhoods because everybody's so nice and friendly and polite. Could you guys find me one of those? Until you do, listen to this interview with this bus driver. Listen to this report from hell. When I first started reporting on black mob violence and black on white crime, I noticed there was a lot of stuff happening on buses and public transportation, buses, trains, subways. But I never really got it, and I always included that in my stories and my videos and my books, but I never really got around to doing something just on buses until now. Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. I'm the author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Here we talk about black mob violence, black on white crime, and the greatest hoax of our generation, the greatest lie of our lifetime, the myth of black victimization. And so I never got around to doing something on buses. I just kind of kept piecemealing it and said, well, this happened on buses, that happened on buses, people attacking bus drivers, people shooting, automatic weapons into buses. Lots of argy-bargy going on where the black people involved arrive at the scene of the black mob violence on a bus, and they depart on a bus. In Rochester, there's 500 black people were in a movie theater. Talk about this and Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. In a movie theater, lots of violence broke out inside the theater, outside the theater. The cops came. Nobody got arrested. They put them all on a bus and sent them home. But just the other day, I got an email from a bus driver, a guy who used to be a bus driver. He's a big fan of the books and the YouTube channel, and he said, "Hey, Colin, I saw where you're asking people with personal experience with black on white crime to tell you about it. I was a bus driver. I got stabbed." I said, "Say no more." We're going to talk to that guy about what his life was like as a bus driver, as a big city bus driver that experienced a lot of racial animosity and racial violence. But why don't we set the stage first? Because, man, I've got so many stories in my files, so many clips, so many audio links about what happens on buses. I thought I'd run through just a couple of them, and then we'll get to the interview with the bus driver. Now, I did this on a telephone, and I just flicked on my little recorder while we were doing it, and I told him I was going to, and he was all good with that. So the audio quality is not going to be as great as maybe it should be, but what he is saying is so interesting and so important. I think it's going to be worth tweaking your eardrums just for the few minutes this interview takes. So let's get to it.
The entire fight was captured on video. Teenage boy is charged with attacking a bus driver as he was picked up at high school, and the driver is fired for fighting back. New at 6 as WISN 12 News' Nick Bohr reports from Kenosha. The entire fight was captured on video.
Well, the driver was making his usual pickup of about 30 kids here at Kenosha Tremper when suddenly one of them turned on him.
That's for your mouth.
The whole thing started when the Kenosha Transit driver told police he demanded the student's ID for swearing and being disruptive in the past. The 15-year-old boy goes past the driver, then walks back up, calls him an expletive, and starts punching the driver, who retaliated, getting up and punching the boy right back. While that's going on, another camera shows children start shouting as the bus begins to roll, slowly running into a car, shoving it aside, and then hitting two parked pickups before coming to a stop. According to the police report, the 135-pound boy later admitted, quote, "I was mad that he was going to suspend my bus pass, so I got up and punched him in the face." The driver was later fired by Kenosha Transit for improper conduct while on duty, failure to properly secure the vehicle, and having a preventable accident. He's appealing the firing. According to these reports obtained by 12 News, the boy's mother wanted the driver charged, but prosecutors decided the only one who would face charges is the boy.
Attacked on the job. New at 10 tonight, a Milwaukee County bus driver tells 12 News what led up to a profanity-laced confrontation, all caught on camera. The driver did not want to be identified.
I mean, he just kept wrenching it back and forth, and I could feel the pain in my shoulder, like right away.
The commotion unfolded on Route 22 Friday. A 15-year-old tries to flash someone else's ID and go.
And I had it in my left hand, and I just kind of looked at it, and I looked at him, and I went, this is a girl.
The driver was met with a tussle and threats.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
It ends with an injured arm near Sherman and Center.
They just kept cussing and swearing, saying they were going to drag me off the bus and, beat me up and all this kind of stuff.
Sheriff's deputies responded within 5 minutes and arrested the teen. Another rapid response came from the drivers' union.
Any other job in the world would not tolerate this kind of abuse that our operators put up with.
The union saying they've seen enough. In June, a driver was dragged off of a bus and beaten. They want deputies on and private security off those buses.
They know they can't arrest them. They know they can't give them a citation.
MCTS saying that security on board is paramount, starting with the 4 onboard cameras. They say security contractors are doing the job.
We have a great security team right now. Most of our issues are minor incidences.
5 girls, closed fists, and loud mouths. Launching an attack on a teenaged couple at the back of the bus.
And I saw my whole face was like bleeding, so I was like, oh my goodness, and it was dripping and stuff, so then I realized what had happened.
What happened to 17-year-old Jessica?
I'm speechless.
Baffles seasoned King County Sheriff's investigators.
What the hell? They're furious. They're just furious watching this.
Investigators say Jessica stepped onto a Route 358 Metro bus at 3rd and Madison November 19th. She was on her way to Shoreline. She sat with her boyfriend, listened to her new Zune, when a gang of girls boarded. One grabbed Jessica's MP3 player. Investigators say the girls accused Jessica's boyfriend of stealing a phone. Within 34 seconds, the fist started to fly in what investigators call an unprovoked ambush on a stranger, and Jessica was 3 months pregnant.
I directly said, I was like, you know what, I'm pregnant, I'm not trying to fight you guys right now. I didn't even know them.
The hits kept coming. We blurred the faces of 4 of the suspects because they are kids themselves, just 14 and 16 years old. A 19-year-old is accused too.
One of them made a comment, well, no one hit her in the stomach, but I was getting kicked in the sides.
The girls bailed but did not get far when the bus stopped and the driver called 911. But the sheriff's office says no one else on that crowded bus dialed for help.
Out of all those people, I think somebody could have said something sooner.
Jessica needed 6 stitches to close the gash above her left eye. Her boyfriend was bruised, but her unborn baby is fine.
That I was scared about.
Man who stabbed 2 teenagers on a TARC bus, fatally wounding one, will not face charges.
Anthony Allen's fate was decided earlier today by surveillance video captured on that bus. WLKY's Lauren Adams is following the story for us. She joins us now with the latest. Lauren.
Rick, a grand jury watched this video about 10 minutes long earlier today. In the end, choosing not to indict Allen. His family tells us while their hearts go out to the young victim's family, justice was served. But some members of the 14-year-old who was killed believe Anthony Allen has gotten away with murder.
It
It's early on the morning of Sunday, March 16th, when 44-year-old Anthony Allen gets on a TARC bus in West Louisville. Moments later, there's an argument with some teens at the back of the bus. That's at 34th and Broadway. Several blocks later, two of the teens have been stabbed. 14-year-old McQuail Offit sustains a fatal wound. In this just-released video, we see Offit in gray punching Allen. Another teen appears to kick him. A grand jury is watching this same video when they make the decision not to indict Allen.
The video captured exactly what happened on those earlier morning hours.
From the beginning, Anitra Allen claimed her father was acting in self-defense.
He got jumped by six teens.
She says now justice has been served. Another family thinks otherwise. Sigmund Ferguson tells us this. We are devastated. We feel like they gave this man a slap on the wrist for taking my grandson's life.
I love McQuail. He was funny. He was a good kid.
McQuail's aunt, Cheryl Offit, isn't sure what to think about the video and the grand jury's decision.
I put that into the hands of the man upstairs.
But prosecutors say when this case was in the hands of the grand jury, they got it right.
The video from that bus, quite frankly, is the true story.
Anthony Allen, as you might remember, had been charged with murder, assault, and tampering with physical evidence. All those charges have been dropped, and he was released today on his own recognizance. His family, fearing for his safety and theirs, declined to comment on his whereabouts. I'm Lauren Adams, WLKY News.
All right, thank you, Lauren. And safety is a big concern. Police say it was dozens of Offit's friends who gathered at Waterfront Park Saturday night and then went on a crime spree.
Joe, tell us about the day you were stabbed.
The day I was stabbed was June 30th, 2011 at approximately 6 p.m. I was in downtown Pittsburgh preparing to do an outbound trip on my bus route, and I noticed a commotion in the back of my bus, and I drove about a block. I pulled my bus over. I opened my back door of the bus, and I ordered a young man, he was a young black man, I ordered him off my bus, and he began to exit the bus, but then he abruptly turned. He walked towards the front of the bus. I could see him coming up in my mirror, and he asked me, "Why are you kicking me off the bus?" And I said, "That's a non-debatable issue." And he then spat on me, and I responded with, "Nobody spits on me, you mother effer." I jumped out of my seat to defend myself. After I put the bus in park, I pulled my emergency brake, and this individual was right on top of me. And it was, basically the best way I can describe it is it was close quarter combat in a 3x3 foot area of the front of the bus. And I couldn't even tell you how long the altercation lasted. I do remember getting punched in the face. I do remember throwing punches myself. I do remember asking, "Will someone please call 911?" And as soon as this altercation started, it ended when a group of his friends came up to the front of the bus, and I heard them say, let him go, let's get out of here." And at which point, this individual, and I believe it was 3 to 4 of his associates, then ran off the bus through the back door. And I then sat down back into my driver's seat, and I grabbed my handset, my radio, to call in to say I had been assaulted. And upon sitting down in my seat, I noticed a warm feeling like I was in a hot tub. And I glanced down, and my uniform, my shirt, was red. And I then picked up my shirt. I pulled my shirt out of my pants, and I saw my white T-shirt was also red. And then when I pulled my T-shirt up, I noticed a circle about maybe a little larger, about the size of maybe a little larger than a half a dollar. on the left side of my abdomen chest area, and the best way to describe it is it sort of looked like hamburger meat. And I immediately thought I'm in trouble, and I proceeded to get my radio up to my ear, and I said, God, please don't let me die on this bus. And I kept telling myself, stay calm, just stay calm. You know what you got to do. You have to call this information in. And I went through the procedure of calling in to the traffic dispatcher, and I said, I need some help. Here's where I am. Here's the route that I'm on. Here's the bus number. I think I've been stabbed. And sure enough, within maybe several minutes, there were police officers there. And they began to question me. I noticed they were questioning people on the bus, questioning people on the sidewalk. The police officer asked me, lift up your shirt. He looked and verified. He said, yes, he has been stabbed. He's actually been stabbed twice. He got me on the other side, which I was unaware of at that point. I never felt myself getting stabbed. And then it was maybe minutes after that is when paramedics arrived. I was able to walk off the bus. I got onto a stretcher, and I was taken to Mercy, UPMC Hospital, and there I underwent surgery. And my family came down, my wife came down, my in-laws came down, and it was a close-run thing. I received 2 stab wounds. One lacerated the curvature of my stomach, and I also had 2 broken ribs. That was on my left side, and on my right side, there was a wound about the size of a little bit larger than a quarter, and that simply tore into a lot of muscle. I think that the surgeon put it best to my wife. She said, somebody upstairs was watching over your husband. I spent nearly 5 days in the hospital, and after that, I then came home, and I was off work for 5 weeks, and then after the 5 weeks, I saw a workers' compensation doctor. In between that time, I also saw my surgical team, and at the end of that 5th week, I saw a workers' compensation doctor. It was a doctor I'd never seen before as part of the surgical team, and I said to my wife, get ready. She said, what do you mean? I said, just watch, get ready. Sure enough, he said, you're ready to go back to work. And it was at that point I then contacted an attorney.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Let's stay with the let's stay with the event. How deep were your? Do they talk about when you get stabbed? Do they talk about how deep wounds are?
The police informed me that it was a 4-inch blade. I believe they called it a boot knife. They said it's sort of a police/military style knife. Very small, easy to conceal.
Now, how many people were on the bus when this happened?
I honestly could not tell you the exact number, but I've been told, and I've read accounts that there were anywhere from 15 to 30 people on the bus.
What was their reaction?
Their reaction was no one came up during the fight. No one came up after the fight. Someone did call 911 for me. I was later told by police that they were in a state of shock and disbelief, the passengers on the bus. That's why they simply didn't run.
Tell us about this neighborhood where this happened.
This was in the downtown section of the city of Pittsburgh. It's a business area. A lot of corporate businesses are there. There are stores there. There's actually residential areas. High-rise apartments.
And what kind of commotion were these kids causing?
Loud, disruptive behavior. When I looked in the mirror, the young man was actually standing over a passenger And I thought immediately, he's harassing some passengers. He's off my bus.
You were a bus driver. I know you were a bus driver for about 5 years. You drove through lots of places in downtown Pittsburgh and in the suburbs. What kind of experiences do bus drivers have with black mob violence and black on white crime on the buses on the job? Not just stuff. First of all, tell me about stuff directed at you as a bus driver, but what about stuff directed at passengers that happens on the bus?
In terms of incidents directed at a driver, a lot of it is it's just total disrespect for.
So tell me what happened. Tell us what happened to you. How would people disrespect? How would black people coming on your bus disrespect you?
They wouldn't want to pay the proper fare. Sometimes they wouldn't want to pay a fare at all. Sometimes they would be intoxicated. Sometimes they would threaten you. If you asked them to leave, sometimes they would refuse to leave. You would have to get police involved. If they did leave the bus, usually something like a brick or anything they get their hands on would come flying at your bus, maybe at your windshield, maybe at the front door, maybe at the side window where you were sitting. Those are some of my experiences. I have friends there who actually were shot at with firearms, beaten, kicked, spat upon. One individual was actually cut with a box opener, a box cutter. So it's sort of like the infamous box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Now, what about aside from how many violent episodes in your 5 years? How many violent or episodes where there was potential for violence were you involved in on your bus with black people?
I involved in. Well, counting that episode, there's I would say at least nine episodes where I thought it was going to turn into a physical issue.
Of those 9 episodes, how many times were the people involved black?
That was 9, all 9 times there. Of what I thought was going to be a physical altercation, at least 9. And as I mentioned earlier, the verbal altercations where you're being verbally abused in the dozens.
What does that mean?
That would mean a good example is one time during rush hour, I could hear someone making all types of racial comments directed at people.
Like
For
what?
example, Hispanic people would get on, Hispanic riders were on the bus. I was going through the Oakland section of Pittsburgh. That's where there are a lot of universities. Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh, Carlow College, Chatham College. There's a lot of colleges, universities at that area. And so you have a very diverse group of riders. And I could hear an individual every time people would get on the bus say something like, "Oh, here comes more of these sticks." Then it was chinks. Then it was this or that. And I looked in my ear and I could see it was a younger black lady. And I asked her politely, "Miss, could you just knock that off?" I said, "Everybody wants to go home." I said, "All we want to do is go home and get there safely. Could you please just knock it off?" And she then responded to me, "Anything for you honky lips." I stopped the bus. I opened the door. I said, "Get out." I said, "You're not staying on the bus. You're not going to insult me. You're not going to insult any of the passengers. Get off the bus." She then came to the front of the bus and just began berating and screaming at me, you honky racist mother effer." And I picked up my phone to call for police. And I actually took my phone and I turned it right towards her so that dispatch could hear exactly what was going on and what she was saying. And I got back on my phone and I said, "You better get some cops here now, quick." And she proceeded to just keep going with the same. It was like a broken record. You know, you mother effing, honky, you racist bitch, you cracker, you this. And after I guess she ran out of gas and realized the police were coming, she just stepped off the bus, and I drove away.
You know, I forgot to ask what happened to the people who attacked you. Did they ever get caught?
People who attacked me, the young man was turned in by a number of different individuals. The folks he was with, there were a number of girls who actually cooperated with police. They showed police where they ditched the knife. They threw it in a sewer in downtown Pittsburgh. People on the bus were able to give descriptions. The public on the sidewalks were able to give descriptions. Police actually went to merchants and asked to see their surveillance videos. The bus that I was on that day had a surveillance system, and from what I was told, it worked better than the Hubble Space Telescope that day. It got very clear pictures of this individual. They were broadcast on the local news. This individual went to Western Psychiatric Institute to hide. And from what I understand, he was ratted out there. And police went on a Tuesday morning, and they picked him up. He is now in a penitentiary.
When you say Western Psychiatric, he kind of like turned himself in for psychiatric help. Is that what you're saying?
He turned himself in there in an attempt to hide.
Gotcha. Hide in plain sight.
They can basically hide out there. People can hide out there for 3 days.
Yeah.
And from what I understand by law, they are not allowed to release any information that you were there. But some good citizens realized who he was and made a call to police and said, he's here, he's going to be released in a few days, and the police were there to get him.
Okay, so you say they said, so they sent him to the state pen for how long?
He's serving 4 to 10 years.
During the trial, was there any witness intimidation? Did any of his friends call you, come by your house, do anything during the trial to convince you not to testify?
My name might have been released out there for maybe just a day or two. That sent my wife into orbit, and then my name was pulled from any news broadcasts or any newspapers. There was no connection as to my address, my whereabouts, where I lived. The only time that I would say there was any type of maybe witness intimidation is when we went down for the actual trial. There were a group of folks I assumed to be his friends, with the hats on backwards, the pants down to the ankles, and the flannel shirts. And I knew immediately that these guys are just trying to scare me and intimidate me, and they failed.
Did they say anything, do anything? They were in the courtroom with you?
They said nothing. They did nothing. There was a very prominent police presence that day.
How long did the trial take?
They opted for a plea. So it was sort of a biff bam boom kind of a thing.
Were there any delays, or they just got right to it?
I believe with for the preliminary hearing there was a delay. And then they did have the preliminary hearing. I had to be in attendance. My wife was with me. There were some other bus drivers who showed up for support. The police officers who were involved in this were there. I believe one of the young ladies who was on the bus that day was there as a witness for me at the behest of her mother. Once her mother, from what I understand, was told once her mother found out about this, she said, "You're going to go down there and you're going to help that bus driver." And she was a young black girl, and she came down and she was terrified, but she did what she had to do.
Did she go up on the stand?
we stood in front of the judge, and when the judge asked her, do you see the person who stabbed the bus driver? She was terrified. This poor girl shook. She shook like a leaf. And I know exactly what it was. It was the retaliation thing. She was fearful of retaliation. And she did acknowledge the individual. And when I was asked, I acknowledged him immediately.
What about the other people involved? Was only one person charged in this crime?
Yes.
What about the guys who kind of aided and abetted his escape? When you were fighting, did anybody else punch you or kick you or anything like that, or did they encourage him while he I don't even call it a fight, while he was attacking you?
I honestly cannot say that I heard any. The only thing that I did hear is let's go, let him go, let's get out of here. And I can only think now that was because they saw what had happened, and I was bleeding profusely, and they decided we better just all get out of here, before who knows what happened. But I don't believe anyone else came up to hit me or kick me or anything. It was just this individual and myself, just one-on-one, close quarters.
People people who watch my YouTube channel might be aware of this, because I do a lot of stuff on violence against bus drivers. It's all black people attacking bus drivers. A lot of it on video. I don't think people are aware of how dangerous that job is, and the violence and the threats that a bus driver faces every day. And I have to say, in my experience talking with other bus drivers, it's a black thing.
I think that's fair to say. I think that's very fair to say. And I would always tell people while I was even doing the job, family and friends, if you want to get a pretty good idea of what society is like, talk to a bus driver or talk to a police officer. Especially folks who live out in the suburbs. And, it smells like roses all the time. And I would always say, there's a whole different world about 35 miles that way. A whole different world. You don't want any part of it. I would a lot of times just clam up. I wouldn't even want to talk about things I saw or heard.
What about okay, so we talked about stuff that happened to you, and we know that happens to all bus drivers. I get tons of mail from them. Constant threats of violence, acts of violence to black people directing at bus drivers. What about actually on the bus? I see a lot of video of moms, black moms, young black moms, beating their child or yelling at them or calling names. And somebody on the bus will say, "Hey, lighten up." All of a sudden, you have a big, nasty fight. Everybody's attacking, usually kind of like the older white lady or older white dude who told them to quit beating on that child. What kind of violence did you see on your buses?
I saw a lot of the verbal assaults, and what I would do is I would try to put an end to it before it escalated. I would either order the folks off the bus, or I would say the police are on their way.
When you became a bus driver, did you know part of your job was going to be kind of like injecting yourself without any decent means of self-defense into these episodes of black on white racial hostility?
I knew it could be bad. I grew up in the city as a kid. My dad was a bus driver for 28 years. He never talked much about what happened. Things were a lot different back then. People were a lot different. But when I first took the job, I knew it could be a little bit hairy at times, but I never expected it to be what I experienced. Not in a million years.
What do other bus drivers say? The guys that you kind of left behind. Did they? You ever talk to them?
I talked to quite a few of them. When this all happened to me, there was a great deal of anger with my coworkers, a great deal of confusion as to why is the company and the union treating him just as badly? Why are they mistreating his family just as badly? To this day, there's still a lot of resentment from many of my coworkers towards the company and towards the union about what happened. And I can honestly tell you that the overwhelming majority of bus drivers that I know, if they could leave that job right now, they would. They're there only because of the money and the benefits and because they've got mouths to feed.
When bus drivers get together and talk about their job, you guys talk about the violence and the racial hostility that you experience, or what do you guys talk about?
You talk about a little bit of everything. You do talk about the job. You might talk about what happened, what's going on at home, about the sports teams. But when we do talk about the job, most of the talk is about the bad. It's about the hostility towards bus drivers. It's about the breakdown of society. It's about it's about the guy who got on who didn't want to pay his fare. It's about the mom who got on and almost dislocated a child's shoulder, because they wouldn't stop crying. A lot of times it was just things that were just beyond disbelief of what you saw, what you heard, and it was almost a venting session. Guys would just sort of vent, just get it out of their system. Sometimes you talk about some of the funnier things maybe you saw that were, just maybe a comical kind of a thing where there was really no danger or no violence or anything involved. But most of the talk was guys would come in at lunchtime, for example, and slam their lunchbox down, or maybe they wouldn't want to eat because of something that just happened on their bus.
When you called the cops, when you had to call the cops, what was their reaction?
Is this pertaining like when I was assaulted, or just any kind?
Just any kind. Yeah, not even outside of when you were stabbed. Were cops responsive? You shrugged your shoulders, or what was their reaction?
From my experience, the police were always they did an excellent job. In my experience, whenever I needed police, they were there and they helped you out. I think there was a level of frustration with them too.
When I get email from cops and bus drivers, and when I talk to them, when I talk to people who have been on the front line of black on white hostility, and I put cops and bus drivers right in the same category of people who see it are subjected to relentless levels of racial hostility every day. People that have been doing it for 5, 10, 15 years. Listen, I'm not a psychologist, but I wouldn't have any trouble categorizing them as being suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome. I mean, how many cops are committing suicide out there because of this stuff?
I completely agree with you. It's the stress levels are extremely high with a lot of my friends who are still bus drivers. The frustration levels are very high. Even to this day, when I see a bus, it's an instant reminder. Or if I don't really watch the news anymore. I don't really read the newspapers. I subscribe to your YouTube. I do watch that. A lot of that is just beyond disbelief. But I can easily see that where there's just levels of stress and frustration that these folks have to deal with on a daily basis.
And we're asking them to deal with too much of it.
Way too much of it. Way too much of it.
Now, I should have asked this in the beginning, but so you were a bus driver for about 5 years. I know that when I was talking to a Chicago cop the other night, I mean, when you're a new cop, you get sent to the high crime areas. Like in Chicago, even the black cops, they get sent into the black neighborhoods, unbelievably high crime. He said the black cops are the first ones that want out of these neighborhoods. They want to go be a cop in some of the upscale white neighborhoods, even if they have to work midnight to 8 a.m. shifts instead of 9 to 5. What's it like for a bus driver? How do you choose your route?
You choose your routes based on seniority in the particular garage where you are. Your days off, your vacations, and the work that you pick to do is all based on seniority. So it's fair to say that for the bottom dwellers, you're looking at weekend work, you're looking at what they call late work, which is typically after maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You're looking at working holidays. You're looking at really crappy vacation weeks until you build up enough seniority to then maybe start to pick weekends off.
What about the routes? Aren't some routes more desirable and easier to operate than others?
Absolutely. Absolutely. With the system up here in Allegheny County, they've done a number of cutbacks in service where a lot of those premier routes that went into nice areas, that went into areas that did not have bus service, well, they were cut. And a lot of the work that is still left is rather undesirable work.
Are you trying to say that these bus routes at some point go through the projects, go through black neighborhoods, go through unsafe places that make them less desirable?
Yes.
It's hard to really come out and say that, isn't it?
It is hard because as a bus driver, I took my job very seriously that I was there to perform a public service. I was there to get people home in one piece in all weather conditions. Rain, sleet, ice, snow. If it was late at night, if it was after a sporting event. I took great pride and satisfaction getting people home, getting people where they needed to be in one piece. And I always thought, there's really no need for this insanity on these buses. These people use these buses every day. Why do that on a bus? Why do it to drivers and why do it to other passengers?
So we're talking about black people on buses and how they were there's a constant level of threats of violence and racial hostility. So of all the trouble you personally have had on a bus, where it escalated into obscenity, threats, and violence, what percent of that came from black people?
At least 75 to 80. At least. Easily 75 to 80.
How many times have you been called racial epithets?
Dozens. Dozens upon dozens of times.
Is that like as in 25 or 250 or 25 over 5 years? 25, 250, 2,500?
Hundreds of times.
You think the people that just know you, maybe where you shop or where you work or where you go to church or wherever, Do you think they have any idea at the level of black on white hostility that exists just in an average place like Pittsburgh?
No. No.
What do you see the difference between what they think the way the world is and what you've experienced driving your bus?
I think one of the big differences is they never drove a bus. They never rode on a bus. They never lived in the inner city. What they see maybe on the evening news is just sort of filtered out. It goes in, it gets filtered out.
When I see news coverage, this is kind of one of the themes of my YouTube channel and of this podcast and of my writings and my new book, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, is that when you look at the news coverage, the easiest story to find every day in any media outlet in America is black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. And so to talk to a bus driver or to talk to somebody with experience on the front lines, you don't really get stories of black people being victims of white racism. You get the stories of black people routinely victimizing white people with hostility and violence. Is that an unfair characterization?
No, that is not an unfair characterization. Unfortunately, that's reality.
So if a guy out of college, white kid out of college, came up to you and said, "Hey, think about being a bus driver. I always like cars. I like driving. Sounds like a fun, interesting thing. I know I can make some good money." What would you tell him?
You know what I would probably want to do is punch him right in his mouth and say, "You better get that idea out of your head right now." When my son was asked by his pap when he was 4, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" He said, "I want to drive the bus like Daddy." I had chest pain for 3 days. I was sick. I actually had one time a guy at Lowe's say to me when he saw me come in one day with my uniform on, "Oh man, I would love to get into that. I would love to be a bus driver. How can I get into the Port Authority?" And I said, "Are you married?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "You have kids?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Are you pretty happy right now?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, then just keep doing what you're doing." I said, "Because you'll never see your kids. You'll be working late. You'll be working weekends. Just keep doing what you're doing and don't even think about doing this job."
Okay. So really, but in a way, I mean, when you become a bus driver, you volunteer. That's the part you volunteer for. You volunteer for the weird hours, the weird holidays, the weird schedule. You volunteer for a level of pay where you volunteer for a job that may not be ideal for your family, but you don't volunteer for the harassment and the violence.
No. I took on the job because my dad did it for 28 years. I wanted to do what my dad did. I wanted to be a bus driver. I did it for my family, so I could feed my family. I could take them on a nice vacation at Disney World. I could keep a roof over their head. I did it because I didn't want my son to have to do it. But no, when I signed up to be a bus driver, I never thought I'd have to be like a Marine or a police officer.
The thing about being a bus driver is even worse than a cop. You're so vulnerable as a bus driver. I've seen lots and lots and lots of videos of bus drivers being attacked while they're in their chair, unable to defend themselves. Plus, your back is to everybody. It can't be a comfortable thing in a hostile environment.
Absolutely not. Very uncomfortable, very nerve-wracking at times.
Did you
very unpredictable.
Did you happen to see a story on my YouTube channel coming out of Baltimore? It was just they just had a verdict. This happened last year in Baltimore. A black bus driver is telling a white family, the only white people on the bus, to move back, and they're saying there's no room. The bus is too crowded, so they have to do a big altercation. Next thing you know, she's encouraging a large group of black people to get off the bus. When they get off the bus, beat the hell out of them. That's what happened on video. She was convicted of it.
Let's cut to the audio of a video I did on this Baltimore bus driver caper when it happened last year. Did you ever read a story that you had to read 10 times before you decided if it was true or not? Hi, this is Colin Flaherty with White Girl Bleed a Lot. Here we talk about racial violence without racism, without rancor, without apologies. This is one of those stories. Let's just get right to it.
And 11 News exclusive tonight, a former MTA bus driver is accused of conspiring with school kids to get them to beat up a family riding on her bus.
And to make matters worse, she allegedly waited for the kids to do that and let them back on the bus and drove away.
And 11 News exclusive tonight, a former MTA bus driver is accused of conspiring with school kids to get them to beat up a family riding on her bus.
And to make matters worse, she allegedly waited for the kids to do that and let them back on the bus and drove away.
According to court records, it was back in June when 45-year-old Karen Murphy, a former MTA bus driver, dropped that family off here in Hamden. Murphy is accused of organizing in person and over the phone for a number of school-age children to beat up a family that was riding on her bus that she had an altercation with.
Can you back up my space? Thank you.
Former MTA bus driver Karen Murphy leaves district court in Northwest Baltimore Thursday, answering to multiple charges of assault and conspiracy after court documents say she told a group of juveniles to beat up a family of 3 that was riding on her bus.
She actually let these children get off of this bus
and
beat me and my family for at least 3 minutes. Then let them get back on, get back on, and back on again.
And then took off.
Yeah.
Yep, and then took off with every one of them that did it.
It was back on June 6th. Christina Gibson and Christopher Fisher picked up his son Logan from school and were riding the 22 bus to Hamden. Gibson says the bus began to get crowded and that the driver told everyone to move to the back of the bus. Fisher then told the driver that the bus was too crowded, and the two exchanged words.
She pulled the bus over, got out of her seatbelt, stood up, screaming in both of our faces, don't tell me how to do my job. If you have a problem, come across this line and I'll knock you the F out.
At this point, court documents say 2 juvenile males on the bus began talking to Murphy, and she made a phone call. 2 stops later, a large number of Mervo and Ace Academy students then boarded the bus.
The school kids immediately went right up to her and they were speaking almost like they knew each other. And we were this far away from her, so we heard what they said. And she said to them, I don't care where they get off. You handle that and I'll take care of you. I'll wait for you. As soon as the doors opened, they hit my boyfriend in the back of the head with something.
At their stop on 41st Street, the family was then swarmed by the school kids who they say beat them and then pepper sprayed them.
I was really scared. I was nervous.
9-year-old Logan tried to defend his mother, but couldn't.
I tried to get the girl that was beating her up off of her, and she turned around and pepper sprayed me.
Gibson and Fisher say after reporting the incident to MTA, they say they got the runaround, and it wasn't until 2 months later that detectives came to visit them. There was also a video of what happened on the bus that ultimately led to Murphy's arrest.
I was really happy that she was arrested. I just want to make sure my 9-year-old knows that she's not going to get away with this.
Murphy is charged with 3 counts of second-degree assault and 3 counts of conspiracy. We also understand that 8 juveniles have been arrested and charged in this case as well. MTA would not comment on this case, only telling us that Murphy is no longer an employee.
I did see it. Yes, I did.
What did you think about that story?
It's almost beyond comprehension that a public servant would be that combative with passengers who are not really being combative themselves. I think that's part of the problem with this world, especially with black folks. There's just this combative nature, this militant nature, this anti-authority nature, where what I always say is if they're going to kill police officers and not even be remorseful, think of what they're going to do to people like you, me, the butcher down the street, the construction worker walking to his job.
Yeah, amen to that. Hey, let's kind of wrap this up a little bit by letting people know that you're not a bus driver anymore. You went through the whole thing. You came out on the other end, and you found a good job that you like with good hours, good money for your family, and all the right times. So it turned out not okay, but it turned out okay. Kind of okay.
Right. I thank Jesus Christ every day that I'm still on this earth. And anybody that says to me there's no such thing as divine intervention, well, there is. There was something with me that day on that bus. Somebody was watching over me that day on the bus, and somebody's been watching over me and my family ever since. And, just to put in a good plug for police officers, these police officers that were assigned to this case went above and beyond the call of duty. These people should be given medals of honor for what they did for me and for what they did for my family.
Okay, Joe, we're going to wrap it up there. I want to congratulate you for your bravery for talking about this, because I don't think people realize what it takes to re-experience these events, and especially the long-term abuse that you suffered. And it's not a pleasant thing, but I think that I think you suspect what I know, is that when people like you, Joe, speak out, you're saving other people's lives. So I really want to thank you for that.
Over at my YouTube channel, or when I write articles for American Thinker or Front Page or Breitbart or Daily Caller or places like that, a lot of times people want to know, well, what can we do? And some people say, well, we got to form our organization. Another one says, well, yeah, we got to do a demonstration. Well, listen, the answer of what we can do is going to be different for every single person. And so people should just do as much or as little as they can. But I suspect for everybody, it's going to start with the same thing. You're just going to have to carve out a tiny little space. And inside that space, you are going to speak the truth about black mob violence and black on white crime and black on white racial hostility. And you are going to demand the truth from anything that comes into that space, whether it's your friend, whether it's a radio talk show host, whether it's a newspaper. It's really as simple as that. And we don't need to speak with anger. We don't need to speak with hatred. And we don't need to generalize or stereotype. But above all, and we don't need to apologize. Here's something else we don't really need to do. We don't need to argue and debate. The people that come, my YouTube channel now is getting 25 to 50,000 comments a month. And growing. That's growing by like 20% a month. So thank you guys for all that, by the way. But when I say we don't mean to argue or debate, what we really need to do is just kind of to expose the people who are ignoring, denying, condoning, excusing, encouraging, and even lying about this black mob violence, black on white crime, and black on white racial hostility. And so that's kind of where we are. And we don't need to get into these long arguments about academic studies that no one's ever heard of, no one's going to check, no one's going to read. A lot of that is just deflection, right? We're sitting here talking about people losing their lives. We're sitting here talking about people having their whole lives changed by one of these encounters. Next thing you know, somebody wants to take you into a classroom and discuss this linear regression on this analysis that was bogus to begin with, bogus to end with, nothing in between, but you are deflected. So let's stay on these stories. Let's remind people of the enormous amount of black on white violence there is in this country. Depending on where you are. The normal, I saw somebody today where they said, well, the amount of black on white violence is 3 times greater than white on black. No. Nobody's saying 3 to 1. People are saying 10 to 1, 20 to 1, 50 to 1, 100 to 1. Depending on where you are, 1,000 to 1. That's the ratio. So let's keep our eyes on that. Let's insist on the truth there. Let's remember people like Joe, the bus driver, what he saw every day on the job. Good Lord, I hear from bus drivers all the time. How many of those video clips do you want to hear? Go to Google bus driver attack, or Google teens attack bus driver. I've got some over at my YouTube page too. I was surprised that I didn't have more on there. Anyway, so thanks for sticking with me on this podcast. Hope you subscribe to it. Hope you share it. The podcast is doing real well. A lot of people listening to it. Man, everything's kind of like all the numbers and all the whether it's the stories or the podcasts or the YouTube channel. Boy, the numbers are just, and my book sales are just everything's kind of like pointing up in a very positive direction. And I'm very grateful for that. But I know that we still have so much to do. When I talk about Joe, I just feel like I'm just sticking a little thimble in a fire hose. I mean, that's how much we're talking about, and that's how much is getting away. So thanks for everything you decide to do. And when you get on a city bus, you're going from your home to the shopping mall or the movie theater or to the ballpark or to the local entertainment district. Just remember one thing. Don't make the black kids angry.